My name's Jeanette Schaible, and I am a registered dietitian with Nutrition in Motion. Today, we're going to be talking a little bit about picky eating and feeding the picky eaters, which actually works out quite well in terms of being maybe stuck at home if we must with our families and with the kiddos. This will be recorded, and I am going to have everyone be muted for the time being, but feel free if you have a burning question to either drop it in the chat box or jump on and unmute yourself and ask away. And all right, so moving on, feeding the picky eaters. So today we're going to look at what picky eating, a quick description of what picky eating is, some problems with pressuring picky eating, and habits that actually make picky eating worse. As parents, we typically try to encourage our families to eat healthy and to do the good things for ourselves. However, there are habits that we may be doing that actually make it worse instead of better. And we're going to look at some tips for working with picky eaters. And all of this is going to be in context about the fact that we are staying at home, we have more family time, we have more time to prep food with our families, and how those can be used to our benefit now that we have fewer obligations and we have more time to spend with our kids to help overcome picky eating habits and problems, if you will. All right. So picky eating in the nutshell, and everyone has a slightly different description of what this looks like for their kid. But picky eating is the avoidance of certain foods, refusing to eat, or having a fit or a tantrum during a meal. And typically this is characterized by having very few foods that a child is willing to eat or will eat willingly. So this is very normal, particularly for kids under the age of 5. However, when it's continued throughout adolescence and into teenage years, and even as adults, it can set us up for some unhealthy habits down the road. So we want to make sure that when we are working with picky eaters, that we are not that we're being conscious that intolerances, sensitivities, allergies aren't being categorized in this picky eating collection, because those are medical issues that do require limitations of certain foods. But if a child does not have an allergy reaction or and just refuses to eat a certain food, falls more in the line of picky eating than, say, a medical concern. Unfortunately, there are some things that we do out of love and care and wanting the best for our kids that can increase the problems with picky eating. So this can actually increase weight for children, which sounds a little ironic. You're like, my child doesn't eat anything. Where's the weight coming from? When these children do get a chance to eat either the foods they really like or get a chance to either sneak food, they're more likely to overeat the foods that are not as healthy for them. It also encourages mindless eating. So kids are very in tune to their bodies and know where when they're feeling full and when they're feeling hungry. So when we're encouraging or pressuring our children to eat foods that they either don't want to eat or aren't hungry for, it's encouraging them to develop habits of overriding their body's responses. As adults, a lot of us have grown out of or have overridden that mindful eating piece for a long time. So we don't even always know what it feels like to feel actually hungry and actually feel full, and when to stop eating or when to start eating, so we're eating the appropriate amount for ourselves. Kids, on the other hand, are still very good at this because they haven't learned otherwise. And pressuring picky eaters to either eat a certain amount of food, a certain type of food, or eat it all can override their body's natural instinct to be more mindful. Unfortunately, pressuring picky eaters can also relate to negative feelings associated with foods and how they may interact with the foods that they're involved with in their lifetime, or around situations where food is either a main component or a piece of an event. Children may want to eat less if they are being pressured to eat because it may make them uncomfortable or stressed, and they may be coping with it as, yeah, I'm not eating at all if you say I have to eat this. It may be that they may be eating beyond their needs. Again, thinking back to that mindful eating piece. If they're constantly eating more calories than they need, they can increase their weight. They can also eat more food than they really need, and that doesn't necessarily lead to positive outcomes for kids or for adults. And I know a lot of adults with these staying at home orders and more cooking from home, and the snacks being literally sometimes everywhere. It's very hard to retrain ourselves to be more mindful when those aren't the habits that we've grown up with. With kids, it's a really great opportunity to start being more mindful and to help them continue on the good habits so they don't have to relearn when they're older. Kids may feel the lack of self-control or a lack of control if they're pressured to eat, and may take that out in other ways. They also may feel more stress at mealtime. So that might mean that they don't have a positive relationship with food. They may not like any events where food is a piece of the puzzle, and they may just really not want to spend any time with the family if it feels like they're going to be pressured to do something they don't want to do. And while we're all home with our kids, it's a really great time and opportunity to take a step back and say, okay, picky eating is an issue, but it's not the end all be all. And we can figure out ways to help to combat this without making things worse. All these things that we may be doing, like encouraging our kids to eat more or wanting our kids to finish their plate, they're not coming from places of being mean and wanting to be awful people. So don't ever think that, but they do come from a place of love, support, and concern. With this presentation, I'm hoping that we'll be able to redirect some of those love and concern and care for kids to other habits and activities that we can do to help reduce picky eating, as well as help make sure that we are taking care of ourselves and staying healthy. So what makes picky eating worse? So I sort of mentioned this earlier, requiring kids to eat something, mandating they eat a certain amount of food, focusing on or forcing the clean plate or club. Now, I've worked with a lot of adult clients who, as children, were told they had to finish what was on their plate or they couldn't leave the table. Now they're working through weight issues and relationships with food that are really difficult and sometimes emotionally painful to talk about because it made those meal times really stressful and really uncomfortable for them. So when we're thinking about our kids, this is a great first start or great first place to look and say, do we do that? Do we require that? Is there are places where we are encouraging this behavior without necessarily saying, if you don't eat your green beans, you can't leave the table or you can't get dessert? It's a great place to start for sure. Becoming a short order chef. So a short order chef is someone who says, oh, you know what, you need this, I'm going to get that for you. And it's a very quick sort of individualized meal. What this often looks like for kids is parents are making a nice chicken casserole and the kid's like, I'm not eating that, I'm only eating chicken nuggets. So the parents make chicken nuggets and french fries for their kids. This actually makes it worse, makes picky eating worse because the kid goes, great, guess what I can say every time I don't want to eat something? I'll just have chicken nuggets. I'll just have, meatballs. I'll just not eat, anything except cake. Awesome. Now the child's learning that we're doing the things that they want, and they are getting the benefit without having to at least try or experience different foods. Using foods and sweets as rewards, it's very easy and very common to say, okay, if you do this, we will go to Dunkin' Donuts and we'll get a donut, or we'll get a lollipop. What this tells kids is that they can tune out their body, and their body is saying, hey, you know what, I'm feeling full, I don't need to eat right now. But when it's used as a reward, kids don't want to, no one wants to lose out on a reward. particularly if it's something they've earned. So they may be more likely to eat it and override those emotional and physical feelings of, all right, I'm actually full, I don't need to eat, but I have this reward, so I should eat, and then I'm probably not going to be hungry later, and that's going to drive my parents crazy. They're not thinking that, but that does end up happening sometimes. Snacking or having juice or milk or even soda or iced tea all day long really helps fill up a child's stomach, and that makes picky eating worse because their stomach's full. They don't want to eat anything because they've already got a full stomach. When children eat snacks or drink juice or milk or soda or iced tea or whatever they might be drinking throughout the day, that's not only affecting their stomach and how they're feeling full, but it also affects their teeth and can lead to dental issues. So when we think about a child or a person, everything is connected. And when we're thinking about, okay, what are they drinking during the day? If they're eating or if they're drinking a lot of juice or milk or anything that has calories and nutrients in it, they are putting their teeth at more risk for dental issues. Distracted eating is a huge one. Now, I'm not going to ask you to raise your hand. However, if we thought about what we do as adults, who here has ever had a distracted meal? I will raise my hand because I definitely have eaten a meal and was not paying attention to it. I was doing work, watching TV, whatever. This can actually make picky eating worse as well because the child's not listening to what their stomach is telling them, and they may be more likely to put up a fit or just not eat at all because, hey, you know what, I want to watch this TV show, or you know what, I just got this new toy, I don't want to eat, I want to play with my toy instead. Role modeling picky eating behaviors is one that I love to talk about with parents. When I was working for the WIC program, oftentimes I'd have parents say, you know, my kid never eats vegetables, and I know that's not a good thing. Oh, okay. Do you like any vegetables? What kind of vegetables do you eat? And there's oh, well, I don't eat vegetables either. The child is then learning to not eat vegetables and to think that those foods are not safe or not worthy of eating, because when we see other people doing the behaviors that we are going to mimic, we are less likely to do the healthier options. So if kids see their parents saying, oh, that's disgusting, I'm not eating that, like, oh, I'm really picky, like only, you know, certain people eat those foods, that kid's going to be like, yeah, same. Dad said it. I like dad. Dad's really cool. I trust dad. I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to follow dad's footsteps about that food. And also commenting on food amounts. So we oftentimes forget that kids are growing, or if we have kids, maybe we haven't forgotten, but we're just amazed by the amount of food that they're eating. But when kids are constantly being bombarded with, wow, that's a lot of food, are you sure you want to eat that? Or you know, you don't really need to eat that much food. That's taking away their autonomy to learn and figure out what works best for their stomach. And as they're growing, they do tend to eat a little bit more. They may be going through growth spurts, and that may encourage them to be more, that may change their appetite hormones, so they are hungrier and they actually do physically need more food. So when we're thinking about some things that can make picky eating worse, again, these are not coming from places of being awful parents or being the mean mom or anything. These are coming from love. We want our kids to eat, so we make them something different. We don't want to have food waste, so we encourage them to clean their plate. You want your kids to enjoy all the foods that you're having, so you require them to eat something. You don't want them to be hungry during the day, so you let them snack or have juice or milk throughout the day. You're frustrated and you're burned out, so you don't want to have to sit down at a meal and feel the stress of trying to make your kids eat something. So you put on a movie and just whatever, everyone help themselves. These are common behaviors, and it's okay that if we realize that, you know what, maybe this isn't working so well, this is a great time to take a step back and say, all right, let's make some changes. So if you're like, oh man, I've definitely done all these things, don't worry, my parents did too. I was a very picky eater. Now I'm a dietitian and I eat almost anything. So there is hope. And it's not a time or a game to be shameful of things that you've done. It's a great time to an opportunity to learn and to move forward. So like I mentioned, the stay at home and I'm sorry, there's some overlap here with the words, but staying at home is a great place to start with working with picky eating. Some of the benefits of staying at home or the stay at home and recommendations right now is we have more time at home, which means we have more time to prepare food. We also have more time to spend with our children and have family meals. There are also fewer distractions. You don't have to worry about, okay, did we miss this game? Did we pick up this item for this event that's going on? Do I have to go to a PTA meeting? Right now, none of those are really happening. So there are a lot fewer distractions. It's also a great time to start thinking about food waste. As Michelle Horn did in her presentation just a few minutes ago, she was talking a little bit about some ways that we can help cut down on food waste. And staying picky eating is oftentimes a place where like a lot of food's going to waste. So when we start to make good changes now, we can help reduce our food waste in the short term and the long term. We also have more positive time to spend, and that's under the picture, with kids. So fewer distractions, fewer activities going on. There's no commute, which I know a lot of my clients are absolutely loving, because instead of having to drive or travel long distances, their commute's like, 5 minutes from their bed to their workspace, and then, 5 minutes back to home. This is also a great time to be teaching kids new skills. So when I say new skills, these include cooking, baking, even other food preparation skills like chopping, ripping, cutting, broiling, grilling. And those are great things to help them be more engaged with not only what they're eating, but also help you with food waste, food prep, and can help cut down on stress and be a really positive teaching moment for your child. It's that great bonding time. So when your kids look back years from now, we'd rather have them say like, my parents were really like, we did some good things together. That does not mean every single day you have to pack their day with all these different activities, and everyone does an online yoga class and everyone does Tai Chi and then everyone does all these activities together. We don't need to go that crazy. But when we have good quality bonding time, that helps with improving self-esteem for kids. It also helps you get to know your kids. So if things start to go a little bit wary as they get older, you have some context as to, yeah, that's not how my kid acts, or, maybe it's just their age. This also, when we think about working with picky eating at home right now, this can also help lighten your load. Now, for the YWCA, they focus a lot on women and families. So picky eating is typically related to kids. However, I do know a few adults who their spouses are like, yeah, they're the picky eater, picky child in the family. But this also helps cut down on your stress. And for a lot of American culture, food preparation has been put on women. And I'm not saying that that's necessarily the best way to go, but if we are the primary food preparation person in the house, whether you're male, female, grandma, teenage kid, it can help lighten your load if the other people in the family help take on some responsibility and are helping cut down on stress for you. This also helps keep you in check. It's a great time to start looking at, okay, what am I doing? Is this a benefit? Okay, nope, that's not a benefit. All right, so maybe we should change that. Oh my goodness. And then we can also helps us with reaping benefits of making changes and taking healthier initiatives that are going to last a lifetime, not just through the stay-at-home orders and the pandemic. So let's look at some tips for overcoming picky eating at any age. When I say any age, most of these are geared towards children. However, Adults, I still work with adults who are picky eaters, and we do a lot of the same recommendations for them. So I've alluded to this a few times, and meal times are a big part of helping with picky eating. The same meal being provided for everyone and having everyone sit at the table are really great ways to normalize sitting down as a family, prioritizing meals and food, and also introducing your family to the same dish. Limiting distractions is a really great way to help make sure that you and your family and kids are able to focus on not just eating and spending time together, but also how your body's feeling. If you've got TVs going, computers, Zoom calls popping up, phones buzzing, dogs barking, you might not be able to help the dog one as much. But you can turn off the electronics in particular and take a step back and say, okay, this is family time. We're going to cut down on the distractions. We're going to eat a nice meal together. And that's going to help reduce your stress as well. For kids in particular, it's a great idea to talk about what you're having. What does it look like? What does it smell like? Have you seen it before? It also helps increase their vocabulary, because if you teach them about broccoli rabe or Yucatan squashes or Yucatan potatoes, they're going to start to learn more words and start to build up a better vocabulary and a better confidence when discussing and talking about food. Letting children serve themselves is also super helpful and important. Some families are like, my kid would put the entire bowl of chicken nuggets and like no broccoli. When I say your child serve themselves, what that helps them do is determine how much food they should be eating. It lets them learn, okay, that was too much, that was too little, I can get more. But when they're able to be more in control as to what they put on their plate, they're going to be more interested in trying it than if we serve them, because they didn't have any control or any input as to what was going on to get those foods on the table. Giving them options is also a really great one. My recommendation for parents is when they're when they're talking to their children about trying new foods, that they do a this or that situation. For example, would you like broccoli or would you like cauliflower? Both kind of tree-like, but for example, this or that. It doesn't give them the option to say no, which is what a lot of parents get when they say, do you want broccoli? Kid says no, conversation's kind of over. If they have an option of one or the other, then it gives them the autonomy to say, okay, I'm going to try broccoli, might not like it, but I'm going to have a try. Giving a mix of new and unknown foods, or new foods and foods that are well known, is a great way to help make sure that your child eats something, but also helps normalize that food. If we went to another country and someone put down this huge giant meal and you had no idea what it was, I might not eat it. Some of my picky habits still come back every now and then. But if there was at least one other food that you were familiar with, you would be more likely to try at least that food and maybe try some of the other foods. Kids are the same way. If there's nothing they recognize, it's going to be a lot harder for them to feel comfortable trying a new food. The second tip is allowing restricted foods. Now, for anyone out there who's doing a lot of baking, like cookies and brownies and bread, power to you, they are delicious. When we allow these restricted foods, that allows our children to have a normalized relationship with fats and sweets. This also translates into adulthood when these children and adults are able to say, you know what, I'm going to have a hamburger, I'm going to have a brownie, and I'm okay with that. A lot of my clients now are almost afraid to either eat a sweet food because they feel it's going to go off the rails for them. Or they say, you know what, I had one brownie, I might as well eat the whole pan. When we normalize these foods, it allows kids to realize that, okay, there's nothing that special about them. I can have them, but it's not a eat all of it or don't eat any of it time. It helps kids build that normal relationship, which helps them in the long term. It also discourages sneaking. So some kids, when they are feeling stressed or they feel like they haven't gotten enough food, or was a friend of mine came over to my house or go over to your house, go over to someone's house, they're more likely to eat and overeat those restricted foods like cake, candy, sweets, potato chips. And this is not necessarily a good relationship either, because that can build up patterns like binging, or binging and purging, or eating disordered type behaviors. It also overrides their stomach and their physical ability to say, you know what, I'm hungry versus I'm full. If they have these foods available and they're able to make that part of their meal choices, maybe they have a slightly smaller portion of dinner so they can have a piece of cake. That's helping them learn how to make these foods fit so it's not an all or nothing relationship. Checking your habits. This is definitely one of my favorites, as I alluded to earlier. But children follow the people they trust. So right now, while you're staying at home, this might be you, this might be parents, this might be older siblings, this also might be grandparents, aunts, uncles, friends who are staying with you, other people in the house that your children look up to. When we're able to lead by example and say, you know what, I'm going to have some broccoli, or I'm going to have some of these new vegetables, your child's learning like, oh, it's okay to try new foods and it's not the end of the world. It also gives sort of like a primal instinct to, did you die from that? Nope. Okay, so that's a good thing. I can probably eat it too. I do recommend families with little kids who are picky, or kids who are picky in general, to be willing to try new foods with them. If your child sees you trying a new food, they're more likely to at least give it a shot as opposed to turn their nose down at it. Keeping that in mind, your reactions to food may be copied. So if you take a bite of something and you spit it out and you make a big stink about how it doesn't taste good, I'm pretty confident your child is not going to be sitting there going, no, Dad, this is the best thing I've ever eaten. So be mindful about how you react to food. If it's not your favorite, use different adjectives or positive adjectives, or talk something else about the food, like, oh, you know what, I see this purple color on the beet, or look how shiny the potatoes are. Can give you a good segue to keep your child interested without shutting off that relationship between them and that food. Also, listening to your body. So when we think back to that mindful eating piece, when we're born, our body is naturally programmed to say, we're hungry, we're going to eat, when we're full, we're going to stop. Over time, we slowly lose that ability, not because nature takes its course, but because our society is very much into overriding that response. Eating when you're not hungry, eating at the movies, distracted eating, overeating, stress eating. The number of movies that just that show stress eating is crazy. So when we aren't able to listen to our body, it's also teaching our children that, okay, Dad had to finish his plate, or mom's drinking all this extra food and eating when she's stressed. I guess that's how I should do it. So keeping in mind that your habits and your activities are followed, and taking a more conscious effort. This is not an easy thing to do, and I work with families and adults every day about listening to their body, being more open to different foods. So if you are having concerns, or you're like, yeah, no, I can't do this by myself, dietitians are here to help you. Because it is hard. And when we're able to make good choices for ourselves, our kids are going to follow suit and make it easier for them lifelong. Another thing that we often think about when we are planning meals and snacks for kids is a bigger portion. Oftentimes we serve them, or we plan for a portion that's our size. However, we can eat a lot more than, say, a 3-year-old, 5-year-old. And yes, a 14-year-old boy may out-eat you in terms of food amount. However, we still want to be conscious of the kid-sized stomach. So because kids' stomachs are so much smaller, it's important to make sure that when they are eating, that they are offered healthy, nutritious food. And when I say offered foods, having a schedule for meals and snacks is really important. This helps them from continuing to graze all day. It also helps make sure that they're giving their teeth and their body a time to rest between meals so they aren't constantly full and then leading to more picky eating behaviors at meals. If you're having trouble with this as well, this is also a recommendation I make for all my clients, scheduling or at least planning meals and snacks. Water is 100% a-okay between meals because water does stretch your stomach, helps you feel a little bit full, but it's not contributing to any dental issues and it's not contributing to weight concerns or overeating. Milk or juice should be served at meal times. So to help limit the number of nutrients that are getting into the body and helping children learn a relationship between having like a milk, a juice, or something to drink with their meals that is either healthy or within balance of what else they're eating. For some kids, that may also mean that serving liquids at the end of the meal would be more beneficial because they may drink all their milk first and then be like, yeah, I don't want to eat anything else. I'm full. So trying to push those liquids a little bit later into the meal may be helpful for some kids. Having smaller kid-sized portions can be helpful. If our kids are eating a lot at snack time, they're going to get to their meal and not be hungry. And then you're going to have to fight with them about why they don't want to eat certain food. So having more kid-sized portions and allowing them to be done when they say they're done is important. When we're allowing kids to continually graze all day or to eat, come back in 10 minutes and be like, yeah, I'm hungry again, they're learning that they should be grazing. And they're also learning that they can have food all the time. And yes, we want our children to be eating well and have access to food and not have food security issues. But if they're eating too consistently throughout the day, it can lead to, again, those dental issues, those health issues, and then it can lead to them not eating well, not eating their other meals well later. Involving the kids is probably one of my very favorites because right now, when we are recommended to stay home, staying more with the family, it's a great time to get the kids in the kitchen, get them hands-on food, hands-on different kitchen tools to help them not only learn skills, but also help them feel more connected to trying a food. Some recommendations can be including letting a child pick out a recipe. Now, within reason, if they want to make a 3-tower, wedding cake because they want to bake it and decorate it, we can scale that back. But letting them pick out a recipe lets them get excited and lets them build up a little bit more interest. And using child-appropriate tools helps prevent injury as well as helps make sure that they are able to be more successful. Involving the kids also can involve letting children pick out a different food at the grocery store or allowing children to determine how they want to serve the meal, whether it's on a pretty plate, in a child-sized bowl, all in cups, you never know. Some examples of the appropriate child preparation tools or examples could include using a butter knife to slice soft cheeses, mixing spices, using a masher to mash potatoes, crushing bread into breadcrumbs with a water bottle or a rolling pin, tearing greens or vegetables for a salad or a stir fry, and using cookie cutters to cut one for, of course, you could always cut cookies, even cheeses, soft fruits, or even cooked vegetables or grains to help give them a slightly different feel and help your kids get hands-on with the food. When I worked with a community kitchen in Maine, They had a program where they brought in students. The students prepared the meal with the guidance and help of staff, and then the children got to eat the food. Not all kids were extremely excited about the food eating piece, but a lot of them were really excited to learn a new skill. And even if you make this whole meal with your child and they are still apprehensive to eat it, they're still learning skills that they can use later. They can also take that into adulthood, and they're not calling you every single time they have to figure out how to boil an egg or how to properly mash potatoes. With a little bit more of our free time at home, or our time at home, we can think about finding fun ways to serve food to help encourage children to try it, but also thinking about, as an adult, would you be interested in trying it? Someone brought a big pan of gray slop and was like, oh, this is really good. How enticing does that sound to eat? To me, it doesn't. So when we're able to make food a little bit more appealing, it may make us more interested in trying it, and it may make it more fun in terms of the preparation. So children love colors and different textures and shapes. So it's again where those cookie cutters can come in, using different colored carrots or different colored salad greens or different colored beans, different textures. So think chickpeas versus hummus, very different textures, but coming from the same food. You can even use foods to make little food scenes. Some get very elaborate. Good for those people, not probably going to be what I do every single day, but they can be a great way to use to get kids a little bit more hands-on with food and try food in the process. Different utensils or plates, trying new food options. And then even families that maybe a couple people have different allergies, or you don't want to make one big meal for everyone. You'd rather have it pieced together per person. Bento boxes, layered parfaits, fajitos, taco bars. I even saw someone had mentioned in the previous presentation about bar meals, which would be like a taco bar, pizza bar, pasta bar, potato bar, and letting your child pick what they want is a great way to, and also helps with leftovers, is a great way to get the family involved without having to feel like, wow, I have to do all this and now I'm miserable. The last thing I want to encourage and remind everyone is that this takes time and practice. Your kids are growing, and your kids are most likely going to grow out of this. It's not the end all be all if you have days that don't go so well, and there are going to be days that go really well, and you're like, look at me, I'm doing great. If they don't beat yourself up over it. The habit of healthy feeding for a family is more important than necessarily exactly what every single item that your child eats. If you get in the habit of having healthy meals available, having those vegetables available, even if your child is not going to be the first one to chow down a whole bowl of broccoli or even try the green beans, having those as an option and continuing to take care of yourself is also really important to help them see that it is a priority. Staying focused on the positive. Oftentimes we say, I made this thing and child's not eating any of it. Did they pick at it? Do they smell it? Do they put it on their plate? Did they lick it once and then, kind of just stare at it for the rest of the meal? All right, let's consider that a little bit of a win, because they also could have thrown a tantrum and they didn't. Trust your child's appetite. And this is really hard because I know parents want to help them make sure that their child is growing and eating well. But children are very in tune to their body. If they say they're not hungry, they don't want to eat, okay. See how that plays out. If that continues for a long period of time, maybe reaching out to a provider. But for a lot of the time, your child is just filled up and they actually don't need as much as we think they do. Asking children why they don't want to eat something can open a whole can of worms. The reason why I think this can be helpful is there are some children out there who know that they don't want to eat meat, or that they are concerned about where it came from, or they think there might be dirt in it. And it's a great learning opportunity to not only either diffuse their concerns or to help them understand where they're coming from. If they say, I just don't want it, or it's green, we got a slightly different question going, but you can also ask, all right, is there what would you do to this that you would try it? Maybe it's putting a little ketchup on it. Not the worst thing in the world either. Taking small steps to help build healthy habits is important, because if we try to recreate everything all in one day, it's going to be really difficult and you're going to have a lot of burnout. Small steps like letting them touch it, letting it sit on their plate, letting them have a tiny taste, letting them help prepare it. Those are things that slowly over time build up to encourage more interest and more variety. I believe it takes 7 to 15 times before a child is going to be receptive to a new food. So the first few times you're probably like, God, this is really frustrating. You got a little bit longer, but it's okay. If it's a food you really like, hey, more for you. Picky eating does become a problem when your child stops growing. So if you notice that you're taking your child to the doctor and they haven't grown, their weight hasn't changed, or it's changed really quickly or really slowly, or they're having skin issues, or they're put on a new medication, these can all be red flags. It's not something that you have to rush out and be extremely worried about, but it is something to keep in mind and to talk with a provider about. Not eating has become a coping skill for some children. It's also a coping skill for some adults, and unfortunately, this can lead to poor body image and health and weight issues as well. So if you have a lot of stress, or your child has a lot of stress, figuring out some ways to help cope with the stress that don't include eating is really important. Certain medical issues can lead to more picky eating or more difficulty with eating, or certain textures. And those would be times that reaching out to a professional will definitely be helpful and important to help make sure that it's either a passing phase or that you're able to work around it. So in a quick summary, picky eating is common, and often children do outgrow it. Some habits we do and encourage, some of the habits that we do out of love, kindness, and concern are actually encouraging picky eating, but things like family meals, leading by example, getting creative, and continuing to offer can help minimize the battle and help kids come into healthy eating on their own. When we're able to live a healthy life as an adult and encourage our child to live in a similar way in terms of, all right, I'm going to drink my water. You're not going to see me eating a ton of snacks all day long. Not being super hypocritical. That helps your child learn that, okay, this is actually a good way to live, as opposed to, yeah, but when I'm an adult, I get to drink all the soda because that's what mom does. I did want to send a quick shout out to the YWCA of New Hampshire for providing this virtual wellness retreat. The YWCA works with women all over and is a super important part of social justice, helping end racism and improve and empower women. With the YWCA, there is the opportunity to make a donation, and it's a super wonderful organization. As a dietitian with Nutrition and Motion, feel free to contact me with more questions, but I love working with moms and families who are looking to make healthy changes to not only their life for the short term, but also for the long term. If you have questions or concerns, I will be sending out a little email after this to everyone who had registered to say thank you, but also with some contact information and a handout about picky eating. So please watch your inbox for that. I appreciate all of you coming today, and I hope that you would continue to enjoy the virtual wellness retreat. And once the snow stops and the sun starts shining again, we're able to get back outside and continue to live well. Thank you so much for coming today.